Hello, Falcoholics. What is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. We are less than 7 days out from the 2025 NFL Draft. We're almost there. I know that the sort of excitement around this draft seems a little bit tamped down, but despite that, I think it's going to be a fun one. The Falcons do have opportunities to increase their number of picks through various methods that we've talked about on other shows. Definitely, if you're trying to get into the draft now and you missed it, first of all, this is a great show to watch because we're going to talk about some of the best value picks per my board, right? This is my opinion, but my thoughts on the best value picks for the Falcons specifically in this draft class, guys. In the first round, I'm going to do one at 15 and then one after a trade down. We're going to do second round, third round, early day 3, so like rounds 4 and 5 ish, and then late day 3, which is like round 6 and 7. But you can kind of fudge it a little bit with these guys. We're going to get into several prospects in each of those categories, go through my guys at these spots, the best values I feel, and some of these guys may go earlier than that. It's just sort of like, oh, if you can get them in this round, it's a great value. That's kind of where they're slotted, but some of these guys I think could go earlier. We'll see. But if you're looking for more on this draft class, Eric Robinson and I did a great show talking about some of the boldest predictions we had, some of the most contentious, polarizing prospects in the first round. That was on Wednesday's Falcoholic Live. Go check that out. I did a top 10 targets at the 15th pick last week. You can check that out. Lots of good stuff there. You got plenty to get through if you're just getting started now, or if you just need something to tide you over until the draft starts on Thursday, which... not to fill up the entire show with promotion, but we will once again be going live through all 3 nights of the 2025 NFL Draft. Doing our NFL Draft party. We'll be live, I believe, at 7:30 on Thursday, 7 on Friday, and then at noon on Saturday. And we'll be, once again, thanks to George Costanza, giving away 4 NFL Shop gift cards. We're going to be giving away 1 during the first night of the draft, 1 during day 2, and then 2 on day 3. One of those is for patrons and channel members. The other one, of course, is open to all. The other ones, day 1 and day 2 are open to everyone as well. And all you have to do to be eligible for that, there'll be some simple things like just like and subscribe, that sort of stuff. Very easy. And we'll give them out live on the show towards the end of the show. We appreciate everyone's support, everyone hanging out with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Even if the Falcons don't make a lot of picks, we'll have a good time, and we'll see. Maybe they'll do some trading, some trade action here. But that's what we're going to be getting into today is the best value picks for the Falcons. And I got a lot of guys I want to talk about, so we're not going to waste too much time. Real quick before we dive into that, I want to bring you guys a word from our sponsor, BetOnline. Folks, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. As I'm sure many Braves fans are aware, maybe it seems like it's a little painful over there right now. But baseball season is in full swing. There's a long way to go in baseball, but we're in the home stretch for the NBA. Hawks are facing a critical play-in game to see if they can make the playoffs here. The NHL playoffs are getting going as well. And BetOnline's got more ways than ever to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. You can check out MLB, NHL, UFC odds. BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. And in between games, you can head on over to the new BetOnline Casino. They've got all the top Vegas-style games, including poker, live. I believe they've got live slots as well. All that fun stuff. So if you're into that, you can go check that out. When you sign up, make sure to use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV to get access to the latest promotions, whatever they are. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Let's dive in to some of my favorite value picks for the Falcons here. Starting in the first round, we're going to go, first of all, at pick 15. Who do I think the ideal sort of value selection? And mostly this is just the guys at the top of my list. Given where guys are tending to go in drafts, I think the best value at 15 would probably be, taking Mike Green at 15. If he does fall to 15, I think Mike Green at 15 is objectively the best value pick, assuming someone crazy doesn't fall, right? But in the realm of the reasonable, I think Mike Green at 15 is a great value. It obviously makes the most sense given the Falcons' needs. As much as I like a guy like Jahdae Barron and have him like ahead of Mike Green in terms of my projections and draft board, I do think Mike Green is the best fit in terms of draft position and positional need and positional value and all that stuff combined. I think there's a compelling case to be made that he is the best value here for the Falcons at 15. If they stay here at 15, Mike Green gives them the potential to be that elite pass rusher that they just haven't had since John Abraham, right? Other than the arm length, I just don't have a lot of issues with Green on tape. On the field, obviously, this is what I'm talking about. The Falcons are going to have to investigate the off-field stuff if they're comfortable with that or not. That's, something they're going to have to determine. Like I said, there's just not much out there for media members that aren't like completely entrenched with these teams or get, the insiders, right? I don't have much that I can tell you about that. So it's really up to the Falcons to determine if he's on their board or not. It seems like he is, given their level of interest, but we'll have to see come draft day. But on the field, I love Mike Green's tape. I think he's a way better run defender than he gets credit for. Obviously, that's going to be harder in the NFL given his lack of length, but he's just a demon. He is absolutely physical, high motor, super explosive, and just he's more advanced with his hands than you would think for someone playing at Marshall, right? I mean, this is a guy that I think can come in and have an immediate impact. I don't, again, when I say immediate impact, I mean like this could be a 5 to 8 sack guy as a rookie, and maybe help you out on rundowns too. And we'll see that would be a very good rookie season typically in terms of sacks. I don't know if it will turn out that way or not, but I think the potential is certainly there for that. And then of course, long term, this I think is a double-digit sack guy. This is a guy that can get to that mountaintop that the Falcons have been looking for. They haven't been able to get that consistently since John Abraham. Vic Beasley did it 1 year, and that was it. So that's where we got to get back to. And I think he would make an excellent tandem with Arnold Ebiketie and then Leonard Floyd kind of being your number 3 pass rusher. I think that's a good trio of pass rushers. And that's way better than this team has had in a long time. So that's sort of where I think the best value is to be had at pick 15. Now, after a trade down, things change because I think if you're trading to, let's say between 21 to 27, you're not going to be, Mike Green's not going to be there. I think he's going to go probably right around 15, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later if the Falcons do pass or trade down. But you're looking at a different crop of guys. And there's a number of guys that I would like in that range. But the one that I have been able to get sometimes, and why I think this would obviously be a great value, it's not going to shock you. It's my number 3 prospect for the Falcons, Malachi Starks. We've talked about Malachi Starks a lot on this show. I think he has some special movement skills, not necessarily long speed, but his smoothness as an athlete and the way he moves around the field. It's rare, you can kind of just see it. It's one of those things. There's some players you just watch and you're like, that guy moves different. And it's not necessarily time speed. It's like, it just is what it is, right? And I think he's got super high football IQ. You can plug him in anywhere in the secondary. Now, I think his best role is going to be as a free safety, someone covering deep and that sort of thing. I think that's where he should eventually wind up, or playing cover 2 or whatever. But he can play slot. He can play in the box if you need it. I don't think, his best role is there, but he can absolutely fill in there and give you at worst, sort of average starter level play. But I think eventually you want him back, at safety with Jesse Bates, kind of those two doing their thing. And I think if they need him to play slot this year, he can. But I think ultimately you just throw him into the secondary and say, this is one of our top 4 guys that's going to play every down, and we'll figure out where he's going to play depending on the personnel. But no matter what, he's going to be out there. The Falcons seem very interested. It's obvious, right? They've visited with him like 4 times. He showed up to their local pro day, which it's pretty interesting that we saw some top 20-ish pick type guys showing up to a local pro day. You don't get that all the time. So whatever the Falcons have done to convince some of these Georgia guys to show up, I mean, that's impressive, right? That you don't usually get that. So I think there's clear interest there. And there's been an interest with a number of these Georgia players, so it's not like it's just restricted to Malachi Starks. But I think in particular, he makes a lot of sense for them. I think he would kind of fulfill what they've been building so far, which is a team that is going to lean on its secondary, right? And that, I know that's not necessarily what fans want to hear with regards to that, but I think that's just where this team is, right? That the D-line has a lot of work that needs to be done. The secondary, I think, is pretty close. I think Mike Hughes is fine as an outside corner too. you just need a slot guy and you need a safety next to Jesse Bates. And if you fill those two spots with good players, then I think you have a very good secondary, and you could kind of lean on that. And I hope they'll be a little bit more aggressive, play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, and let that secondary buy more time for their defensive line that is not the best to get pressure, and kind of lean on that unit more going forward. And I think Malachi Starks in particular gives you the ability to do that. And of course, I think he's perfectly fine pick at pick 15, but if you can get him after a trade down, that's even better value. I think that would make him one of the best values in the draft. So I would be really excited to add either of these guys in the first round, and we'll see, sort of where they end up falling when it's all said and done, or what the Falcons do at 15, because that will determine, a lot going forward. All right, moving on to the second round. The Falcons currently picking at 46. We'll see if that changes. The Falcons haven't done anything in the first round in terms of trades under this GM, Terry Fontenot. They have done stuff in the second round almost every single year. So this, I know we spent a lot of time talking about the first round because that's where you're going to get the most value in a trade back, but the second round absolutely could be a place where they look to trade either up or down as well. But no matter what, there's a couple guys in the second round I really like, and I've talked about both of these guys before, right? It's not going to surprise anyone that's been a long-time listener, but I really like Xavier Watts. I think he's just sort of a slightly discounted version of Malachi Starks, right? I think Watts is a really good safety. I think that, he doesn't quite have, more or less Malachi Starks and Xavier Watts are the same size. Watts is a little smaller, but it's kind of splitting hairs. One guy's 6'1", one guy's 6 foot. Starks maybe has like 5 pounds on him, but they're pretty close. I think, Watts is a guy that also can play the slot. Again, I think he's someone that's going to be best as a deep safety. I think Watts, as a tackler also, isn't the best, but again, he's improved. But, Starks isn't necessarily a super, punishing tackler either. But, I think Watts is just a tier below Starks, but close. Like, Watts is my safety 2, Starks is my safety 1. I think they're kind of similar players in a lot of ways. Starks is 2 years younger as well, so that obviously factors in. But, Watts being 23, it's not anything you're going to lose sleep over, right? So, I really like Watts. I think if he does end up falling to 46, that's a slam dunk pick. I think he's deserving of being a late first round type of guy. I think he kind of gets forgotten given how Malachi Starks has sort of dominated the conversation, but Watts is not that far off, and I really like him. And, I think given the Falcons' needs, it would make a lot of sense if they were like, well, we would really like to have Starks, but given that we need a pass rusher desperately, we might just need to take Mike Green at 15, get that guy in, and then we'll move on the secondary in the second round and hope someone like Watts falls, and we can get, a guy that's just a tick below Starks, but can do the same things for us and also give us a plus player that can help us fill out just a few holes we have left in our secondary. And I think Watts makes a ton of sense there. That would be a guy that I would love to see in that role, in that spot. The other guy is another edge rusher, another guy that I've spent a lot of time talking about, and I've really come around on him more, as maybe one of my favorite day 2 guys. And this shouldn't shock anyone that followed the draft last year, because before this guy went back to school, he was a guy that was talked a lot about as a second round pick last year. But JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State, his floor is super high. And if you listen to my analysis, I like high floor guys. I tend to not like to swing on outliers or guys that are, really going to be boom bust. There are some guys I like in that category and some guys I don't. But I love high floor guys typically, especially high floor guys that also have a ceiling. And I think that's exactly what JT Tuimoloau gives you. He's got the frame. He's got the length. This year he had the production as a pass rusher, right? Again, you look at the 15 sacks, a lot of people are like, oh my God, why isn't this guy a first round pick? It's because a lot of them were cleanup sacks. A lot of them is Ohio State just having a super good defense and defensive line and getting a lot of sacks. Tuimoloau is, I think, a very good finisher, right? He's not necessarily the best pressure player, but he is a very good finisher, and that is nice to have. On top of that, Tuimoloau is one of the best run defenders in this class, and that means you can put him on the field immediately in base packages on early downs, and he's going to be a player that's going to make plays for you and help set up your defense well for third down. And that is very valuable. We've also covered that he's not exactly a slouch as a pass rusher. He needs to be a lot more consistent, but I think, this is a guy that's a bigger end, more of a 4-3 style, and I think that's what the Falcons are kind of going to move more towards. But I think he's explosive. I think he's a good finisher, a very good tackler. He turns it up at the goal line. He's just an amazing run defender. I mean, he's really good. And that to me is like, I would rather nail that and have a guy that I know is going to contribute and play immediately and be able to give me like hundreds of good snaps. And if he's just an okay pass rusher, it's like, at least that's a guy that's going to play in the NFL, have a long career. I just really like Tumaloa. I think he's underrated. I think people, I think it's sort of come too far. Like, I think early on when people saw the 15 sacks this year, they were like, oh, this is a first round guy. It's like, okay, maybe let's back off of that a little bit. But now it's like too far where it's like, oh, he's looking like he's going to tumble towards the third round. It's like, no. This should be a second round pick. And that's where I am on Tumaloa. And I think if he's there at 46, this is a guy I would consider over Landon Jackson, Braden Swinson, especially Princely Umanmielen. And again, those guys are maybe better pass rushers right now, but I think Tumaloa has the highest floor of any of them, the most experience, the best build, other than Landon Jackson, because Landon Jackson is an alien, right? Tumaloa is the most polished, the most pro-ready run defender, and I think he's got similar upside to most of those guys too, even though he hasn't done it consistently. I think the upside is closer than people think, maybe other than, again, Landon Jackson, who, again, he's an alien. I really like Tumaloa, and I would love that fit as well in the second round. Moving on to the third round, notably, the Falcons do not have a third round pick, right? So this is sort of imagining that they acquire a third round pick through some method, whether that's a trade down in the first round, a trade down in the second round, or perhaps a player trade of some kind. Whatever it is, if the Falcons get a third round pick, these are the guys they should consider. And I've talked a lot about Georgia center Jared Wilson and how I think he's going to be a second round pick. I still think that. But if the Falcons could get him in the third round, that would be a tremendous value pick, right? Now, I think it would need to be an earlier third round pick, again, implying some kind of trade down. But I think there's a chance he could still be there in the early third. And again, the Falcons have a big need at center going forward. I do think if they had to go into the year with Ryan Neusel and ride it out with him this season, it's okay. But long term, you want you want a player with upside, right? You want a long-term plan if you can get one. And I think Jared Wilson is that guy in this class. This is the start, other than like Gray Zabel or trying to convert one of these tackles, right? I think Jared Wilson is the guy in this class that you would want. And he makes tons of sense for the Falcons. He's going to be 22, this season. He's super athlete, great outside zone blocker, needs to get stronger, but has, again, basically a one-year starter, but showed everything you want to see. Really good in pass pro, no sacks allowed this year. I think he checks the boxes. Again, this might be a guy that needs time to sit and might benefit from being able to sit behind Neusel for at least some of this season. But it is what it is. He may or may not make it to the third round. I think the Falcons, if they really want him, that second round pick might have to go to him, and maybe that'll make some people mad. I would get it, but I think it's ideal if you could trade down, maybe get another second round pick. I still think that would be okay value. But if we're talking about best value, if you could somehow get an early third round pick and send it in for Jared Wilson, I think that would be perfect. That would be a perfect pick here in the third round where you can address one of your only offensive line issues right now with a day 2 pick. Hopefully get that settled for the future, save some cash there, which is clearly what this was motivated by in the first place. Love Jared Wilson. The other guy I would talk about is another guy that I've talked about a lot. That's you guys can see I really am into this safety class, but Andrew Makuba from Texas. I think he's super underrated. Again, kind of just a lighter version of what we saw from Watts and Starks. Just like Makuba is just more like an inch shorter and 10 pounds lighter than those guys, or 15 pounds lighter. Like, Makuba's small. That's his thing. He is much more of a, like, you need this guy to basically be a deep safety. However, he has played a lot of slot. I think he can do it. And it's not necessarily like a lack of want to. He's just small. I don't think physicality is ever going to be his strong suit, but I think that he's an okay tackler. Again, that's why I think he's a much better safety than a slot player. I think you want him playing deep, but I think as a deep safety, he has outstanding instincts. He's always around the ball. I think he had 5 picks this year. He's a ball hawk. He gets his hand on the football. He's a great coverage player, and that's mostly what you want from a safety, right? That's the most important thing. And I think that if you just put him back there, again, he's not going to give you as much versatility as these other guys, even though he has the experience and the ability as a coverage player to be fine as a slot guy. I think it's the physicality and the lack of size that's going to make that, mostly the weight, right? That's going to make that hard. He'll be okay if you ask him to do that. But if you let him play deep safety, maybe give Bates some more opportunities, closer to the line of scrimmage, because you do have a guy on the back end that can do it. I think Makuba's a great pickup. I think he makes a ton of sense. And again, this is like, if you can get somebody like this later in the draft as opposed to earlier and spend your earlier picks on the most pressing needs like the D-line, I think that makes a lot of sense. Love Makuba. Would love to see him here in Atlanta. All right, so for day 3, we're going to do 2 groups. We're going to do early day 3, like I said, which is like the 4th, 5th-ish sort of round. Then we're going to do late day 3, which is sort of like the 6th, 7th-ish. It's approximate, and again, a lot of these guys in this range, it's sort of like personal preference. You never really know how teams are going to stack these guys, so bear with me on that. But early day 3, one guy, there's 2 guys that you've heard me talk about before. I'm going to get to them first. First one is David Walker. This is a guy. It doesn't have anything to do with DW, the Falcoholic writer, former Falcoholic writer, right? Although that would be funny. Like, you can't escape us, DW. Now we drafted you. But David Walker is, this is, again, like one of those things. It's like, I don't like to bet on outliers. I do like to bet on outliers on day 3. I think that's where it makes the most sense, right? David Walker's an outlier. He's small. He's got short arms. But the man just gets it done. And he knows exactly how to win. He's small, but he knows how to use that leverage. I think this is one of the better leverage edge rushers in this class. He just knows how to get under people's pads. He knows how to minimize their ability to impact him, because he doesn't have the length to fight off a bunch of hands, but he just is good at, giving that half man to offensive tackles, getting under their reach, getting under their pads, and just driving them back with his power, because he does have explosiveness. He does actually move pretty well. He's got good weight to him. He's 260. He's not small. He's just short. It doesn't have the length, but he's good. Like, I just think he's going to work. I think I don't know if he'll be as good of a run defender as I don't know if he'll be as good of a run defender as he was at Central Arkansas. I think that's obvious, right? He was an elite run defender against that level of competition. People just couldn't handle him. At the NFL level, the length and that sort of thing is going to matter more against these huge tackles. So he may just have to be a rotational guy. But again, we're talking about like a 4th round pick here. I think his power rush, his explosiveness, his savvy, that's basically his go-to. Like, I think that will work. I think that's going to work in the NFL. I don't know if it's ever going to be high volume. I don't know if it's ever going to be huge sack numbers, but we're talking about a rotational guy that can maybe be your 3rd edge rusher, one of your rotational pass rushers that I think will be fine against the run. I don't know if he'll be as impactful as like a JT Tuimoloau or these other guys where, they've got more size to go along with the physicality and the strength. Like, Walker's strong. He's got the motor. He just doesn't have the length and the size to kind of hold up at the point of attack. In my opinion, I think he'll be fine. I don't think he's going to get blown off the ball or anything, but maybe not be a plus player there. But as a pass rusher, I think his go-to of the explosiveness, the power, the leverage, all that stuff. I think that's going to work. I think that's going to translate. I think he'll be a contributor for a long time in the NFL. And again, maybe not an elite player, but I just feel very confident that he's going to be able to get it done. He's going to find ways to win. I think he struck me at the Senior Bowl as a guy that's a hard worker, super high motor. He's going to figure out a way to make it work. And I think he's well deserving of an early day 3 pick. And I'm willing to bet on him for sure. I think he's one of those guys you take a bet on. Another guy I'm willing to bet on, cornerback Jacob Parrish from Kansas State. Parrish played outside basically his whole career, only a handful of slot snaps. He's going to have to play slot in the NFL. He's 5'10". But so you're betting on him being able to transition. He's a great tackler. He's strong, sometimes too physical even, I would say. It's just, I love Parrish. I think he's super smart. I think he's got scheme versatility. I think he's a good tackler. He kind of checks all the boxes. I think he's got the ideal, or close to ideal build for a nickel. He's up like 200 pounds. So even though he's shorter in stature, he's thick. He's got the weight to be able to play in the slot and make tackles there. He's an athlete. Ultimately, I think as an outside corner, he's got limitations, but he does have that experience, which is ideal for a guy you're taking in the 4th round, right? You don't know that you're going to be able to pencil him into a starting role, but if he doesn't win like a slot starting job, he's not necessarily a guy that can't play outside. I think he'll have matchups outside that will be problematic for him given the size disparity, but otherwise, I think he could play outside if you need him to. But I think long term, he's a good slot corner. And again, this point in the draft, if you can find a guy, he might have a more narrow role, might not be as versatile, might not have the ideal measurables, but is going to be a good player for you, or at least a good depth guy, a good rotational piece. That's what you're looking for here. And I think Parrish absolutely checks that box. I think this is a good place to get him. And then I'll throw in another offensive lineman here that I haven't talked much about, but this is a guy that the Falcons have looked into, that they've met with, that they're interested in, and I think it makes a lot of sense, and that's Kansas's Logan Brown. And Logan Brown is basically a developmental tackle. I think he'll go in that 5th-ish round range. But he will be 24, so a little bit of an older prospect, but he's got the measurables, 6'6", 315. I think he improved. He's only got really the 1 year as a starter, right? He did play a bit in 2022, but this is a guy that is a right tackle, played all of 2024 at right tackle. Very good zone blocker. Didn't allow any sacks this year. Only 6 hurries. So, I think he's got the traits that you look for. I think that, there's a lot of work to be done. I think he's gotten by on his athleticism and his size mostly at Kansas. Technically, there's a lot that needs to be worked on. But when you have the traits, you just need to be fixing some of this stuff. I think the Falcons are in an ideal spot to add someone like a Logan Brown, or, I've talked about Holland Pierce even later in the draft, these sort of project developmental guys that have shown good tape in college now, especially later in their career, that give you hope that they're improving, they're growing, that there's something here. They've got the measurables. Now you just need to coach them up. You've got a year to do it, right? I think if you draft one of these tackles, on day 3, these guys are going to slot in probably behind McGarry and Storm Norton, and be sort of just a stash and develop type of guy. And let's see what happens, right? Maybe over the course of the year, you see enough of them that you're confident, okay, we're gonna hand the reins to this guy next year, or you're thinking maybe this is a swing tackle, and we still need to get a starter, but at least we have some kind of depth here. Or you're okay, this isn't going to work, we have to go per tackle early, but at least it gives you some kind of piece to play around with and learn something. I think this is the time to draft that developmental piece. They weren't able to do it last year, so if they're going to do it, they need to do it now. See what you can do over the next year, and then we're going to come back, obviously, to this conversation next offseason, and see is Logan Brown or Holland Pierce or whoever developmental tackle, is this guy ready to take over for McGarry, or do we need to go early in the draft for a right tackle, or are we going to re-sign McGarry? That's also an option. But I think Brown is a good value, I think, towards the 5th round range. Like, I think that would be a good spot to kind of stash a player like him and see what you can do there. All right, going to late day 3. Again, this is sort of like, we could probably lump all these guys into day 3 because who knows where teams have these guys stacked. It only takes one guy to take someone earlier to throw this off. But on PFF's board, these guys are all more in that late day 3 range. But, Trayshawn kind of sold me on this guy on our last mock draft, and that's Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma. Again, like Stutzman, he doesn't cover well. That's the thing. He tested out way better than I think most people thought. Like, a lot of people thought he couldn't cover because he wasn't athletic enough. I don't think that's the case. I think it's more of he just doesn't cover well, and maybe he can learn that. So far he hasn't been able to do that, but he is a big run defending linebacker, and he can absolutely give you plus snaps there and on special teams. And at this point in the draft, that's what you're looking for. I think he's kind of like a Nate Landman replacement, and we saw like you can hide a linebacker in coverage, right? You don't have that guy's probably not going to get matched up. You can have that big inside linebacker that's going to be more of your run guy. But you can't hide two. And last year, unfortunately, we had to hide more than one guy in coverage, and that doesn't work. So, Stutzman's not going to give you like 3 down starting ability or anything like that. But I do think he's a very good run defending linebacker. He's got great size. I think you could probably teach him to cover eventually, but it's going to take some time if it happens at all. So early on, run defending guy for big, heavy packages. Great instincts against the run. Not so great in coverage, but look, talking about, 5th, 6th, 7th round here. I think it's a great value pick. He's going to play special teams for you. I think he upgrades the core as a whole, the linebacker room. And I think down the road, like, he has potential. I think a lot of these day 3 linebackers, it's like, if you can just teach him to do this or that, they have potential. I think, honestly, the run defending stuff is probably more complicated for these guys, especially linebackers, right? I mean, there's a lot going on there. He knows how to do that already, so maybe we can just teach him how to drop in zone a little bit better, how to recognize some more things there, and get that sorted out. We'll see. But another guy that I've talked about a lot on this show that I really like on day 3 is a nose tackle. And I've talked about some guys like Jamari Caldwell like earlier. But later, I think a guy like Cameron Jackson from Florida, probably in that, like, again, 5th, 6th, 7th round range, depending on who likes him the most. Again, this is a guy that is just going to be a great run defender. And I think the Falcons need that. Cameron Jackson is huge, 6'6", 340. He holds it well. He can take on doubles. He can 2-gap. He's a really good run defender. He plays hard. He does offer you like some sort of pocket pushing. He's not a productive pass rusher. I think he has 2 sacks, but he does bat down passes. He gets pressures just like from collapsing the pocket and just being huge. And that's fine. That's at this point in the draft. If he can do that as a pass rusher, if they do try to throw on an early down or something like that out of a heavy set, he could get his hands up. He can push the pocket a little bit, but that's all you're really going to get there. This is not like a, Dontari Poe type of guy. This is not like a higher end style of nose tackle that you're expecting to get pass rush production out of. What he is a very good run defender. That's what he's going to do for you. He's going to give you someone that can free up your linebackers and take on double teams and stuff like that, and open up the rest of your defense a little bit. And the Falcons just didn't have that last year. They had Eddie Goldman, who interestingly was a much better pass rusher, and actually pass rushed quite well. It's just like he didn't really give them the run defending that they kind of needed from that spot. So I think getting another nose tackle in here that can give them that run defending is probably something they're going to prioritize. And by prioritize, I mean maybe spend a day 3 pick on it. So Cameron Jackson's like my favorite of those guys. I think he's a lot further along technique-wise than like a Zeke Biggers is. Even though Zeke Biggers probably has the best nose tackle name in all of the draft, and that is something very much in his favor. I think Cameron Jackson's a better player right now, and I'd rather draft a guy like him in like the 6th round than Biggers in the 7th, because I think Jackson could play day 1. And I think Biggers might need longer. I think Biggers probably has to earn that spot in camp and prove that he can play a little better than he showed at Georgia Tech and learn some lessons there. One guy that I'm going to throw in as like a total dart throw that I just kind of stumbled across, over the past week or so. I do think the Falcons want another tight end. Given that they haven't really added anyone, kind of suggests that they're probably going to try to swing on one of these guys late. This is not a guy I really have much like eyes on, but I heard some people talking about him and looked him up a little bit. And Texas Tech's Jalen Conyers is a guy that I think is actually pretty interesting. This is a guy that, 6'4", 265, good size, good measurables, moves well, and a productive pass catcher, right? I mean, I think he had 320 yards, 5 touchdowns, has had 5 touchdowns twice in his career. He's a productive, like, decent enough pass catcher. I think PFF has him with 32 forced missed tackles over the past 3 seasons, which is, I think, the 4th most by any tight end. It's impressive. And the key thing, I think, for the Falcons is run blocking. And I think he has one of the highest run blocking grades of any tight end. I think PFF has him as the best run blocking tight end. And I think that's, that's enough receiving when combined with that good of a run blocking grade, I think, to justify taking a chance on this guy. And maybe, I think those traits add up to someone that could be a tight end too eventually. So I would definitely take a swing on Jalen Conyers late. If you can get, a 6th round pick or something, maybe you can add him in here and just sort of add another guy that has upside to this room. Again, much more of a traditional tight end. This is not a Kyle Pitts style tight end. More of a traditional sort of inline tight end, but I like Conyers. I think he's intriguing. And if the Falcons get him, obviously we'll look into him a lot more, but the little bit I saw, I think is very intriguing, and he's kind of a sleeper, I think, in this tight end class, which has a lot of guys in it, but I do like what we've seen so far from Conyers, the little bit that I've been able to get my eyes on so far. So, guys, covered, 10, 12 players in the last 30 minutes. These are all guys that I have sort of starred as targets early, mid rounds, late rounds. But I want to hear from you guys. Who are some of your best value ads? Early, mid, late. Let us know in the comments. Love to hear from you guys. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Really helps us out. If you want to support the show, first of all, thank you. But if you do want to do that, you can join up on Patreon. It's patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. Or you can join the YouTube channel members as well. So, same perks, just more based on the video. Patreon's more podcast. No matter what, thank you guys for watching. Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. You can follow the show at Falcoholic Live. Thanks again to BetOnline for sponsoring today's podcast. Guys, we'll see you early next week. I'll have a show with NFL draft analyst Thor Nystrom, our yearly check-in to talk about what he's been hearing and the Falcons' plans in this draft and sort of some of his guys. Maybe I can try to sell Kirk Cousins to him while he's here. He's a Vikings fan. Maybe we can get him to take Kirk Cousins back. Probably not. But we will we'll have that show coming to you guys on Monday. And then Trayshawn and I will be back with a show on Tuesday Takes. And then Wednesday, we will have a live mock draft, our final live mock draft for everyone. I should have my final live mock draft coming out on Thursday. And then we will be live all 3 nights of the NFL draft for you guys. So stay tuned for the official announcements on those shows next week. But a lot of great stuff. Fun week ahead. Enjoy your weekend of rest before we launch head on into draft week here on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. We'll see you guys next time. Have a great day, folks.